after spending the last 3 years plus denying the possibility that more government agencies more government agencies have come around to the consensus that COVID-19 came from a lab leak in China, including the FBI in that. So what other myths are being spread to the American people that we instinctively knew were lies? Our next guest is debunking the misinformation spread about the virus that had America on lockdown and many lives ruined. Fox News contributor Dr. Marty Makary joins us now. Dr. Makary, we have a lot to go over. A lot of this has to do with being vindicated in your perspective. So let's go over myth number one, and there's 10 of them. Myth number one: natural immunity offers little protection compared to vaccinated immunity. This is the debate that's ongoing. Where is it at?
160 studies, Brian, have shown that natural immunity is as good or more effective, and the ultimate review was just published. So now it is a settled science, Brian.
But why? Why not say what you've been saying for 2.5 years, 3 years from day one? What benefit was it to discount natural immunity?
Public health officials thought people were too stupid to understand that they may not need the vaccine if they had natural immunity, so they wanted one simple message that everybody could understand. That was the basis for it.
Myth number two: you selfish people that weren't wearing masks, are you trying to kill me? That was the constant refrain on city streets like this. Masks prevent COVID transmission? What is the truth about that?
Well, we had a Cochrane review. That is the ultimate high authority of evidence in medicine. They reviewed all the studies, and they found it had no impact on transmission, probably because it's so highly contagious. And when you have a mask on, the aerosolized virus is smaller than the pore of the mask, and you breathe around the mask. So the virus is inevitable regardless.
And then, of course, there's the quality of mask, and then you get supposed to wear 2 masks. And we actually had Dr. Birx tell us on set to wear goggles. So there you go with your mask. Which, by the way, people are still wearing them, which blows me away. Number three, go ahead.
Birx and Fauci, they didn't know. They were telling people it was spread from surfaces and wash your hands like crazy. So we had bad guidance from the start.
Right. I was supposed to change my clothes in the garage before I walked in. The problem was, among many things, I don't have a garage. Number three, school closures reduce COVID transmission. So how did that work out? You tell us, look at what Europe did. Specifically, look what Sweden did.
That's right. Spain and Sweden did very elegant studies looking at schools. They were open, free, and clear, and the transmission rates and child hospitalization rates were no different whatsoever. We now know the teachers' union wrote language in the CDC document that's now confirmed.
All right, let's debunk another one. Myocarditis hurt so many athletes that I know in their 20s because they took a vaccine that they didn't want to take, but they wanted to be able to go to college or play high school. Now, what about that as it relates to the vaccine and the consistency of symptoms?
Yeah, young athletes were high risk for myocarditis, and then with the vaccine, the risk-benefit did not support getting the vaccine. So the tennis player Djokovic was correct. The study came out of JAMA Cardiology. You're 4 to 28 times more likely to get myocarditis from the vaccine than you are from COVID itself. That was a myth that public health officials got wrong.
And here's the problem, is because they want to make this something that we get every year, like the flu shot, or this is something everyone's going to take. So this is a risk that 7th graders, 11th graders, 35-year-olds are going to have to go through, maybe if their job requires what schools require. That's a problem.
Well, they're saying now that they want a 12-year-old girl to get 65 mRNA COVID vaccines in her average lifespan. We would like to see the data before that recommendation goes out.
Okay, finally, a drum roll, please. The COVID originated from a natural environment or from the Wuhan lab. The FBI joins the Department of Energy. The CIA says we stopped looking, I guess. They have not made a decision yet. That is debunked. You've always thought that.
That's right. The epicenter of the world was 5 miles from one of the few labs. The records were destroyed. The doctors were arrested. There was a lab leak in China in 1977. The data are overwhelming, and U.S. virologists told that to Dr. Fauci in January of 2020, but they changed their tune after they got after a meeting subsequently. So it had always been known. The only reason there's not 100% consensus in the U.S. on this is that it's embarrassing that we were funding that lab. That made it political.
All right. The other thing, Dr. Makary, you yesterday were asked to testify in front of Congress about not only the myths, but also you were in front of the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic hearing. Why it took 2 years to have this, I don't know. This is a little of your testimony.
Mistakes were made, and the pandemic response is a house of cards that's now falling apart one by one.
There's near universal agreement that what we did failed.
We've seen something which is unforgivable, and that is the weaponization of medical research.
So instead of 5 doctors agreeing and disagreeing and have a high-level argument, we had shadow banning, vilification, people being called to be fired. We had things going on behind the scenes to try to diminish people like you and the credentials, whether it was you or Dr. Atlas or anyone at that table. Have you ever seen anything like what took place?
No, look, what they did is they dismissed any different opinion, which, by the way, was like half of doctors out there were saying, wait a minute, we're not on board. And then they made it look like there was a consensus among doctors. Well, there's a consensus because they censored and canceled many doctors. So we would speak up. You know, we were not afraid, and many of us spoke up. And I'm thankful to Jay and Martin for speaking up, just as Dr. Atlas and I did.
What I don't understand is, it wasn't Dr. Makary debates Dr. Bhattacharya. It was, how dare you minimize, vilify, delegitimize your statements rather than take them on? What benefit does it have to say it's my way or the highway within the medical community?
You know, it's inexplicable how we were all dismissed, but it's easy to get bitter. You know, my faith teaches me to forgive. The reality is we've got to follow the data now. The CDC did their own shoddy studies, and they kept citing them. The overwhelming data now shows that they were wrong on so many different things, and we've got to just now remember we got to follow the data, not just the data we like.
Problem is, 2 days ago, Dr. Fauci said the same thing you just said. He followed the data, and it leads him towards a natural occurrence between a platypus and a hippopotamus, or whatever he thinks. But he says that's where the data leads him. That's the problem. Dr. Makary, it's just amazing that we're at this spot. At least we can look back and you could feel vindicated. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Brian.
Up next, Supreme Court Showdown. Justices